Hey everyone, today we're diving into a crucial part of the upper body, the shoulders. Shoulders play a huge role in our overall strength and mobility, not to mention feeding ourselves. Whether you're lifting weights, performing daily tasks, or looking for more defined upper body, shoulder training is essential. By the end of this video, you'll understand the structure of the shoulder muscles, why shoulder strength and mobility matter, and how to safely target each part with some effective exercises. Let's get to it. To get the most out of the shoulder training, it helps to know the basic anatomy. The shoulders are made up of 5 joints in the order of importance. They are the scapulothoracic joint, the sternoclavicular joint, the AC joint, the glenohumeral joint, and the subdeltoid joint. The shoulder joint is not a true ball and socket joint like the hip. The shoulder joint is a very small socket and a very big head. This is what gives our shoulders all this wonderful range of motion. However, it can also set us up for shoulder dysfunction if the shoulders are not trained properly. When you look at the socket, in the middle of the socket is a tiny tubercle called the acicate tubercle. In a healthy shoulder, the ball will be in front of that little tubercle. Most people today carry that ball in front of the tubercle, and this creates even less space underneath the acromion of the collarbone and can even lead to impingement syndrome, rotator cuff tendonitis, and even rotator cuff tears. There are 9 muscles that need to be trained to put the shoulder in balance, and I have an amazing program on H3 TV covering these exercises. But for this video, we will focus on the middle delt, the PEC, the rhomboid, the straightest anterior, and one of the rotator cuff muscles, the supraspinatus. Along with the 9 muscles, there are smaller stabilizer muscles, and these muscles are the rotator cuff, which keep the shoulder joint in place. And what they do is they actually steer the ball in the quote-unquote socket. However, unlike most traditional physical therapy, I feel these muscles are overused and I rarely perform exercises for them except for the supraspinatus. The supraspinatus helps push the ball down in the socket, down in the glenoid when you're raising your arm up. Building shoulder strength goes beyond aesthetics, and here's why it's essential to focus on the shoulder health and strength. Number 1, upper body strength. Strong shoulders are crucial for any upper body exercise or sport. Whether you're lifting weights, playing sports, or just doing daily activities like lifting groceries, shoulder strength is key. Number 2, posture improvement. Many of us have rounded shoulders from sitting at a desk or looking down at screens. Strengthening the shoulders, especially the rhomboids, can help correct this posture and prevent back and neck pain. Number 3, injury prevention. The shoulder joint is very mobile, but it makes it vulnerable to injury. Strong, well-balanced shoulders provide stability, reducing the risk of rotator cuff joint injuries. Now, before we jump into exercise, it's always important to warm up the body, so I want you to jump on a Stairmaster, an elliptical, a bike, I don't care what it is. You can march in place, and all I want you to do is increase your core temperature, break a sweat. It can be as little as 5 minutes. Once you finish doing the cardiovascular warm-up, we now need to warm up the shoulder specifically, and we're going to do that by starting with scapular awareness, because the scapula muscle, or the scapula complex I should say, the scapulothoracic joint, in my opinion, is the most important joint of the 5 joints of the shoulder. So to do the scapular awareness, I want you to sit tall, the head of the ceiling, chin is in, eyes are down, bring your arms out in front of you, and now we're going to be focusing on the middle part of the scapula. All I want you to do is push the palms forward, which is protraction, keeping the elbows locked, bring the shoulder blades back and together, that's retraction. So all you're going to do is go protraction and retraction, push, squeeze, push, squeeze, push, squeeze. Make sure the shoulders stay away from the ears, and in your brain, the middle part of the shoulder blades are coming together and going apart. When you finish that, shake your arms out. Now we're going to go after the upper part of the shoulder blades. So now if this is the upper part, I want the upper part of the shoulder blades to come in and apart, in and apart. To do that, we're going to bring the arms in front again, shoulders away from the ears. We're going to drop the arms down about 20, 25 degrees, and I'm going to push and squeeze the upper part of the shoulder blades. Yes, my shoulders are going to come up a little bit toward my ears. Squeeze, push, squeeze, push. Now notice my head and my neck are not moving at all. Squeeze, push, squeeze, push, shake the arms out. Now we're gonna go after the lower shoulder blades. So if these are my shoulder blades on my back, what I want you to think about, if my thumbs are my lower shoulder blades, is that my shoulder blades are coming down and in, down and in, down and in. So to do that, I bring my arms up to neutral. I'm gonna bring my arms up above parallel. So 20, 25 degrees above parallel. I'm gonna push and then squeeze down and in. Push away, squeeze down and in. Push away, squeeze down and in. Push away, squeeze down and in. Again, you can do that anywhere from 5 to 10 times. And then the last thing I want you to do is I want you to do a mix of the two, where you bring your arms out in front of you again, bring one above and one below, push, squeeze, push, squeeze, push, squeeze. Do that 5 to 10 times, and then switch. And we're gonna do the same thing, push, squeeze, push, squeeze, push, and squeeze, and then shake the arms out. So now we have warmed up the most important joint of the shoulder, the scapulothoracic joint, and now we're gonna do a generic range of motion of the shoulders. So again, sitting tall, elbows at your side, I want you to go ahead and push your arms up into a Y, then push your arms straight above your head, and then push your arms in front of you, let your elbows bend, external rotation, come back to neutral, reach up behind your back, come back to neutral, reach up behind your back, come back to neutral. That's one time. You're gonna do this 5 to 10 times, each time trying to go a little bit further. So again, push into the Y, push above your head, push out in front of you, let your elbows bend, a little bit more external rotation, come back to neutral. Reach up a tiny bit further behind your back, come back to neutral, reach up behind your back a little bit more, come back to neutral. I'm gonna do one more for the camera. Push into a Y, push above your head, push in front, let your elbows bend. Open up more, come back to neutral. Reach up behind your back more, come back to neutral. Reach up behind your back more and come back to neutral. Now, once we've done the range of motion of the shoulders, I said earlier on that I'm not a big fan of doing internal, external rotation of the rotator cuff, but I do think that doing a little bit of internal, external does serve some purpose of getting some blood flow to the rotator cuff. So I have my trusty little yellow band here, which is a really light band. I have a towel roll, and I want you to put the towel roll between your elbow and your torso. Now what that does is that prevents what's called the watershed principle, where if you've ever fallen asleep on your arm at night and your whole arm starts to ache, that's because you have closed off the blood supply to the shoulder. So putting a little bit of a towel roll between your elbow and your torso is a nice thing to do. And then you can just simply do some nice light external rotation. So keeping your sternum up is really important. Chin is in, eyes are gazing down. So you're doing maybe 10 external rotation. And I'm just gonna do the right side for the camera. And then I'm gonna turn my back to the camera, so excuse me. And now I'm gonna do some internal rotation where I'm pulling my arm across my body like that with my yellow band. And again, make sure you do both sides. And now our shoulders are warmed up, so now we can go into those exercises that I talked about earlier. Now the first exercise we're gonna do targets the pec. The pec is an extremely important muscle for the first 40 degrees of arm movement. The pec helps seed that big ball in that little tiny socket. Now, before I do the pec, we need to talk about ranges, because all muscles have 4 ranges. If we actually talk about the eldoa, we have a 5th range, which is actually extreme end range of motion. So when we're talking about the shoulder, since the shoulder is typically a very mobile and very often unstable joint, unlike the hip, which is a true ball and socket joint, and the hip is typically really a stable joint. When we're training the shoulder, a lot of people have instabilities. So when we're training a shoulder that has an instability, we need to work in what's called internal range. So we're literally trying to shorten the muscle. Now that's not the case for everybody. I have a couple shoulder patients right now, which their muscle, the tissue is really dried and retracted, and I'm actually trying to lengthen the tissue. But for the majority of shoulder people, they typically have an instability. Now, if you have an instability, My suggestion for you is to start with a PEC exercise that uses a bar, which is now you have both hands are on the bar at the same time. So it's a semi-closed chain movement, or you can use a machine. So a machine is a fixed axis based machine. I would tell you not to start with dumbbells in the beginning. So I'm gonna demonstrate two exercises for you. And again, as far as the chest goes, we could go on an incline bench or we could go on a flat bench. I don't care. But we're gonna talk about the range, and the range is gonna be internal range. So internal range for me would be roughly from about here to here, here to here. I'm actually trying to shorten the pec. So if I take the bar, which is gonna be my first suggestion for you, I just have an Olympic bar here. You're basically gonna do just an incline press. I'm gonna breathe in as I come down. And again, this is gonna be my internal range. So I'm gonna stop about right here, and I'm gonna breathe out as I push up. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. I'm gonna be working the pec in internal range. If I brought the bar all the way down to my chest, that would be external range. Now you can see that if I had a massive shoulder instability, that could potentially dislocate my shoulder anteriorly. So again, in the beginning, I'm gonna just bet that you probably have an unstable shoulder. So I'm gonna have you work in this range right here, doing a pec, doing a press. And again, it could be an incline, it could be a flat press, it doesn't matter. And typically in that range of motion, most people do not have any shoulder pain when they're working in internal range. Now, if you don't have a bar, you can also then use a set of dumbbells, or maybe you're trying to improve your range of motion of your shoulders. Then we could go with some sort of a fly type of movement. Now, on a fly type of movement, in order to train the pec, we actually need to be above the glenohumeral angle. So in layman's terms, we would just say above 90 degrees. If I drop my arm below 90 degrees, you'll see that I have a massive amount of range of motion. If I bring my arms above the glenohumeral angle or above 90 degrees and I try to go back, right there is where I get sticky. So if you think about how the pec attaches, it attaches in this diagonal sort of fashion. So if I want to truly work the pec, I need to be above the glenohumeral angle. So if I'm going to do a fly, it's going to be more of instead of being more out here in like a T, it's going to be more in like a Y. So my arms go back in more of a Y sort of fashion. Now I like to go external rotation and then coming back up, and I go into internal rotation. Breathe in because my body's opening. Breathe out because my body's closing. External rotation, internal rotation. Inhale and exhale. And you notice how I'm staying more in a Y type of fashion and I'm not dropping down into a T. So that's two exercises that you can use to reinforce the pec. Now the second exercise that I'm gonna do following the pec is for the rhomboid. Now the rhomboid is an extremely important muscle because, as I'm gonna show you with the delt, the middle delt actually holds the humerus up on the body so that the rotator cuff does not have to overwork. The rhomboid is the one muscle that literally holds this whole complex, this whole shoulder girdle on your body. And it's a really important muscle for a couple factors. Number one, it's a really important muscle for posture. It's that muscle that will pull your shoulders back. And also too, because it holds that whole complex on your body, if you're a golfer, a tennis player, a baseball player, or somebody that's swinging some sort of implement, that muscle can really be an important muscle to create power through your implement. So strengthening the rhomboid is important. For this particular move, I'm going to show you the semi-closed chain version on the floor. I'm going to show you a couple variations. So the first thing you got to know is that the sternum is going to be a fixed point. And then if your neck is okay, you're going to put your chin on the ground, which is going to put your neck in extension, and that's going to relax the upper trapezius, allowing the rhomboid to work. If you have neck pain, you're going to have to do it the second way that I'm going to show you, and you're just going to have to do more because you're going to have your cheek on the floor. So we're gonna do a certain amount of reps with your left cheek on the floor, then a certain amount of reps with your right cheek on the floor. So to do the rhomboid, again, we're gonna be working in internal range. So that's why I'm choosing to do it from the floor, because I'm gonna pull my arms away from the floor and I'm gonna do these little butterfly type movements. Now again, to work the rhomboid, just like the PEC, we need to be above the glenohumeral angle. We need to be above 90 degrees. So we need to think of our arms like in a Y. So I'm gonna come down on the floor. My sternum's gonna be a fixed point. My chin is gonna be a fixed point. I'm gonna bring my arms into a T, and then I'm gonna slide my arms up into the letter Y. So in my peripheral vision, I can see the crook of my elbow on both sides. And now from here, I'm gonna lift my arms up as high as I can get them. And remember, I'm working in internal range, so I'm gonna do short, tight, butterfly type movements, like butterfly wings. So I'm here, lift my arms up high, and now my shoulder blades, my upper shoulder blades are pinched together. Open the shoulder blades, close, open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. Nice and fast, just like that. High and tight, high and tight, high and tight. And your goal is 100 repetitions for 3 sets. That's your goal. Now, if you can't put your chin on the ground because you have neck issues, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put your cheek on the ground. You're gonna bring your arms into that letter Y. You're gonna come up and you're gonna do the same thing. Close, open, close, open, close, open, close, open. But now you're gonna do maybe 20, 25 reps, and then you gotta put your cheek the other direction, and you're gonna do the same thing on the other side. So if you're gonna be putting your cheek on the ground, your goal is gonna be able to do 50 each direction, and this is how we reinforce the rhomboid. Now the third exercise that I'm choosing to demonstrate for you today is the middle delt. The middle delt is an extremely important muscle for the shoulder because it's literally the muscle that holds the humerus on your body. And in my opinion, if you don't have a good middle delt, that's when the rotator cuff muscles have to do more work than they're supposed to. And that's why I choose not to work a lot with the rotator cuff when I do shoulder rehabilitation. Now, I also think that the middle delt is probably one of the most incorrectly performed exercises in the gym. Because when I see people doing the lateral raise for the middle delt, I see them with the crook of the elbow facing up. If you look at my arm, you're gonna see that we want to work this middle delt, which is this bump right here. If I turn the crook of my elbow at all up toward the ceiling, I now have put the anterior deltoid under tension. And remember, we talked earlier in this video that if we have the glenoid, that socket, so to speak, for the shoulder, and in the middle of that socket, now this is my right shoulder we're talking about, and in the middle of that socket, we have that little acid-key tubercle. Most people in today's world, again, due to computers, cell phones, etc., most people, they're carrying that ball forward in that little socket. And now when that ball comes forward, we really decrease the space underneath the acromion. And underneath the acromion, we have all of the rotator cuff muscles, and we have a lot of bursa sacs, which help lubricate that area so that the tendons do not get pinched. So again, that's why I'm picking this exercise, because I think the middle deltoid is one of the most important exercises that we can do for our shoulder. But if you do it wrong, you are actually causing shoulder problems. So to do the middle deltoid properly, I like to sit, take my legs wide, fix my pelvis, push the crown of my head to the ceiling, chin is in. Without dumbbells in my hand, I want to be in the plane of the scapula. The plane of the scapula is not back here. It's this way because our shoulder blades sit a little bit off on our torso, and the plane of the scapula for me is going to be right here. Now, I also like to feel like somebody's pulling my arms out of my body, like I'm decoapting or dislocating my shoulders, and I'm going to turn the crook of my elbow down, and now I'm going to work from roughly about, if this is 90, I'm going to work roughly from about 35, 40 degrees, maybe a little bit above 90, depending on the health of my shoulder and if I'm fighting an impingement syndrome or not. Now, people will simply say, oh, just turn your thumbs down to the ground. That is not the case, because I can turn my thumb down to the ground via pronation of the forearm, but you'll see that the crook of my elbow is still facing up. So I need to literally take the humerus and I need to turn the humerus down into internal rotation to make sure that I'm working the lateral deltoid. And so now we're gonna do the lateral deltoid by doing a lateral raise. So I feel like I'm pushing my arms out of my body and I'm raising them up and down. Now I want you to inhale, coming up because your body's opening, exhale down. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Notice that I'm not moving my neck. My head is nice and still. And I'm going anywhere from about 35 to a little bit about 95, maybe 100 degrees of lateral raise. And again, the key is to keep the crook of the elbow facing somewhat down and forward. And that's how we reinforce the middle deltoid. The fourth exercise I'm picking for this particular series is for the straightest anterior. It's that really cool muscle that you see in bodybuilders that looks like they have little fingers coming down on their ribs like this. It's a forgotten muscle. It's really important for guiding and steering the scapula, which I told you early on, in my opinion, is the most important joint of the shoulder. Now to do the straightest anterior, I'm choosing to do it again in a semi-closed chain fashion. So you're gonna come on your knees like this. Now, if you're not strong enough, you can stay on your knees, but if you're strong enough, you're gonna come up in a push-up position. You're gonna get a nice straight spine, and you're gonna do that push-up plus, where you push yourself away from the floor and then let your torso drop between your arms. Push yourself away from the floor, pause, let your body drop between your arms. Push away from the floor, pause, let your body drop between your arms. Now that's the first position. We have two more positions that you can strengthen the straightest anterior in. Bring your arms up in front of you more like this. Drop between your arms, push yourself away, drop between your arms, push yourself away, drop between your arms, push yourself away. And then the third position, you're gonna bring your arms in external rotation. So my fingertips are facing backwards. And now I'm gonna bring my body up and I'm gonna come forward over my arms and I'll push away, drop between my arms, push away, drop between my arms, push away, drop between my arms, and push away. And this is how we reinforce the straightest anterior. Now, the last exercise I'm going to show you is for the supraspinatus. I know, I told you I don't work much with the rotator cuff, but I did say how important the supraspinatus is because when the supraspinatus contracts, it helps push the ball down in that socket. And the reason that's so important is because when I go to raise my arms up above my head, if that ball does not glide down a little bit, that is when we get this pinching or this impingement of the ball going up and hitting underneath the acromion. And that is what hurts, and that's what causes impingement syndrome. And if you have a little bit of bone spurring underneath the acromion, you could actually create a rotator cuff tear. So I do occasionally like to work with the supraspinatus. Now the supraspinatus is an interesting muscle, and like all muscle, depending on how you work it, it could be an internal rotator or it could be an external rotator. And the reason why I'm showing you both is because sometimes people will be really limited in one range of motion over the other. So we might be able to work the supraspinatus in one motion instead of the other, but I'm going to show you both. So if I lie on my back and I bring my arm in front of my body, so this would be flexion. If I bring my arm up in front of my body, the supraspinatus now becomes an external rotator. So the elbow has to be above the body and your arm is going to be at 80 degrees. So if this is 90, I'm just going to come down 10 degrees and that's my 80 degrees. Now what I want to do is I want to fix my scapula. So in my brain, I'm holding my scapula still and I'm simply going to go from internal rotation to external rotation. Internal rotation to external. Internal, external. Internal, external. And I want to do probably 20, 30 repetitions when I'm starting off with this, just to pump a lot of blood into that area and to create some volume in that supraspinatus. So that's if my arm is in flexion or in front of my body. My supraspinatus is now an external rotator. Now, let's say that your person has an issue with external rotation. That's okay. What we can do now is we can get rid of the yoga block and we could bring in something like a foam roller. And now I can put my body on the foam roller. And now I can bring my arm behind my body. So now my arm is in extension behind my body. So I still want to have the arm at 80 degrees. So again, if this is 90, I'm going to slide down to 80. And now the supraspinatus actually becomes an internal rotator. So I want to stabilize myself on the foam roller. I want to stabilize my shoulder blade. And now I'm simply going to take the dumbbell from external rotation to internal rotation. External, internal, external, and internal, external, internal. And now with my arm behind my body, the supraspinatus is an internal rotator. So there you have it. That's how you strengthen the supraspinatus, both in external rotation and an internal rotation. Now, in the past, I've always said if you strengthen a muscle, you have to stretch a muscle. In this particular program here, I'm just going to show you the stretch of the pec major. And for this, because a lot of times people are so rounded like this, I want to go ahead and open the chest. So this is how we stretch the pec major. I'm not going to show you stretches for the other 4 muscles. So we're going to go down on our belly. And if I'm going to stretch my right pec, I'm going to bring my right pec, you guessed it, above the glenohumeral angle. So I'm going to bring my arm slightly above 90 degrees. My left hand is like I'm going to do a push-up, and I'm going to put my right cheek on the floor. Now take a second and get your right armpit as close to the floor as you can get it. And then you want to go full external rotation. Turn your palm up to the ceiling, spread your fingers, pull your wrist back. Now keeping your cheek on the floor, keeping your armpit as close to the floor as you can, you want to push your left arm into the floor like you're going to roll over onto your back. And I'm already starting to get a stretch in my pec. And now what I want you to do, the money move in my opinion, is I want you to feel like you're dislocating your right shoulder out of its socket by gently pushing your palm away from you. Now we hold and breathe for 30 seconds. And then once the 30 seconds is up, I want you to go ahead and slowly relax your body and then relax the arm, and you're going to switch sides. So the right arm is going to be doing like you're doing a push-up. The left arm is going to be above 90, above the glenohumeral angle. Left cheek on the floor. Left armpit as close to the floor as you can get it. Turn that palm up to the ceiling, full external rotation. Spread the fingers, pull the wrist back. Now keeping your left cheek, keeping it on the floor, go ahead and do a push-up that you're rolling over onto your back. And now in your brain, push your left palm away from you, and does that pull. Now when you're stretching the pec fascially, you could feel it anywhere from your palm into your forearm, into your bicep, or into your pec. It's a myofascial stretch. You're stretching the whole entire line. When the 30 seconds is up, you're going to slowly relax. And that's how we do the myofascial stretch for the pec major. Shoulders are a delicate area, so keep these tips in mind for safer, more effective training. Number 1, use proper form. Avoid heavy weights that force you to compromise form. Controlled movements reduce strain on the shoulder joint. Number 2, limit range of motion, especially on exercises like lateral raises. Keep a slight bend in your elbows and don't raise weights above the shoulder height. This protects the shoulder from excessive strain. Number 3, balanced training. Remember to work all parts of the shoulder equally to avoid muscle imbalances. Strong rear deltoids are just as important as front and side deltoids for a balanced, healthy shoulder. And number 4, start light, then progress. Begin with lighter weights and work on mastering form before increasing the weight. The shoulder is a small muscle group, so you don't need heavy weights to make progress. Remember, strong shoulders aren't built overnight. Consistency is key. Aim to work on shoulder exercises twice a week, allowing plenty of time for recovery. As you strengthen your shoulders, you'll notice improvements in posture, upper body strength, and overall balance in your workouts. Thanks for joining me on the shoulder strengthening journey. Give these exercises a try and let me know how they go. If you have any questions or need modifications, drop a comment below, and remember, be consistent, stay safe, and see you in the next video.